Have you ever wondered why those who give the most are often the ones who suffer in silence? Why the kindest hearts seem to be the first broken, the first betrayed, and the first abandoned? From the outside, you appear generous, supportive, selfless. But underneath, there's a haunting realization. The world doesn't reward kindness. It exploits it. This isn't just an observation. It's a pattern, a strategy, a brutal truth few dare to face. What if I told you the problem isn't that you're kind, it's that you are predictably kind, tragically exposed and dangerously unguarded? This isn't virtue, it's self-sabotage. You give, expecting the universe to reciprocate. You show up for others, assuming they'll show up for you. But the world is not built on balance. It's built on leverage. And those who lack leverage, no matter how good, are forgotten. Like pawns on a chessboard, the kind-hearted often march forward, only to be sacrificed. Your sincerity is read as weakness. Your honesty is seen as a weaponless plea. Why? Because predators don't hunt the strongest. They hunt the most visible and most predictable prey. And that, unfortunately, is often you. Since childhood, you were told to be kind, honest, and fair. But no one told you that lions don't bow to lambs. You weren't warned that justice is a myth sold to the powerless to keep them compliant. In the real world, it's not virtue that wins. It's strategy. Those who ascend do so because they know when to bend morality to their benefit, not because they're evil, but because they understand human nature more profoundly than you dare to. They manipulate perception, control narratives, and wield silence like a sword. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. His work wasn't a handbook for villains. It was an X-ray of power dynamics. He showed that kindness without strength is just bait. That morality, when worn too visibly, invites wolves. You think you're noble, but to them, you're just an easy mark. Think, how often have you been used, ignored, or quietly replaced? How many times have you stood on principle and watched the manipulative rise while you were left behind? The fault lies not in your values, but in your strategy. You see, being good isn't the problem. Being good without a plan is. True power lies not in shedding your humanity, but in mastering your presentation of it. When to be kind, when to vanish, when to make your presence unforgettable. But you've handed your soul to a world that feeds on transparency. And what has that gifted you? Exhaustion, disappointment, and worst of all, invisibility. The world doesn't reward the pure-hearted. It rewards the unpredictable, the guarded, and the ones who control the flow of information. You believe that truth will protect you. It won't. You believe people will respect your heart. They won't. You think vulnerability will connect you to others. It will only offer them the tools to dismantle you. Unless you learn to play the game on your terms, you'll remain a pawn in a kingdom built by kings who lie with charm and move in shadows. Your failure is not in who you are. It's in your naive assumption that others play by the same rules. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful individuals say the least? How their silence demands more attention than your words ever could? The ones who are hardest to read, hardest to predict. Those are the ones who dominate. They don't react, they calculate. They let others reveal themselves first. They observe, they withhold. And when they finally move, it is decisive, undeniable, and irreversible. That is control. That is power. And that is what you lack. You were not taught to master silence. You were taught to explain, to justify, to please. But silence is a weapon. It creates mystique. It turns attention toward you, instead of bleeding it outward. If you reveal everything, you become predictable. And in this world, predictability is death. The more visible your pattern, the easier it is to control you. But the one who cannot be read, he cannot be owned. If you truly want to be kind like a lion, not like a lamb. Understand that you can still have a heart and carry a sword. The greatest leaders in history were not the loudest. They were the most disciplined, the ones who waited, the ones who acted only when the time was right, and never a moment before. Control is not about dominance. It's about mastering yourself before anyone else can. And this mastery begins not with others, but with you. So ask yourself this: how long will you continue being devoured in a world that rewards the quiet strategist over the loud martyr? How many more betrayals will it take before you understand that it's not kindness the world respects? It's power, cloaked in kindness. You stand at a crossroads. One path leads to continued sacrifice, the other, strategy. And just before we go further, ask yourself, if you could rewrite the way people see you, what happens when the kind-hearted finally open their eyes? Not just wake up, but truly see. There is a moment, chilling and irreversible, when the one who was once used, overlooked, and dismissed finally realizes they were not born weak, but merely unarmed. That realization is not peaceful, it is violent. It's the death of innocence, the funeral of naivete. When you understand the game, your silence changes. It no longer comes from fear, it comes from control. That's when you stop reacting and start orchestrating. You begin to see people differently, not as friends or enemies, but as pieces on a vast board. Some knights, some pawns, others snakes in disguise. You notice patterns in speech, hesitations in tone, hidden agendas behind fake concern. What once seemed like betrayal now feels predictable. What once broke your heart now simply sharpens your focus. When you see the world as it is, not as you were told it should be, the pain fades, but the clarity remains. And clarity is power. You no longer overextend. You don't offer kindness as a plea for approval. You understand now that attention is a resource, and giving too much of yourself makes you common. You begin to restrict access, not out of bitterness but out of calculation. You learn the law of scarcity. What is always available is never valued. And so your time becomes rare, your presence selective, your approval an earned currency. You no longer beg to be seen. You become the one others strain to impress. And then comes your mastery of information. You do not lie. You do something far more terrifying. You filter. You reveal only what serves you. You speak in fragments, give partial truths, leave blanks others scramble to fill. You realize that mystery is a form of dominance. People fear what they can't understand, and in their uncertainty, they become cautious. They treat you with more respect, not because you demanded it, but because you engineered it. Reputation becomes your armor. You no longer need to fight every battle. Your image fights for you. You let people wonder about your intentions. You allow rumors to circulate. Why? Because fear and curiosity are the twin engines of influence. While others explain themselves into irrelevance, you let silence sculpt your myth. The more people don't know, the more they imagine. And imagination, ironically, is often more powerful than truth. You realize now the danger of emotional exposure. Emotions are signals, signals are vulnerabilities, and vulnerabilities are exploited. So you learn to feel, but not to flinch. You develop what others mistake for coldness, but in truth it is precision. You choose your reactions. You understand that in every moment someone is watching, not with empathy, but with calculation. Lose control once and your enemies will never forget it. But if you remain unshaken, you become untouchable. Then you begin to apply patience, and the transformation nears completion. While the desperate chase short-term validation, you play the long game. You observe in silence while others exhaust themselves, trying to be liked. You know that power flows to the one who waits for the perfect moment. Like a predator in the tall grass, you watch, you learn, you bide your time. And when you strike, it is surgical, no waste, no mercy, just results. You start to master the art of strategic absence. You understand that constant presence breeds familiarity, and familiarity kills value. So you disappear, not to be forgotten, but to become missed. You create space for your name to echo in the silence. You leave just enough behind for people to remember you, question you, need you. And when you return, your reappearance feels like an event, not a routine. That is how kings operate. You are no longer the same. You used to believe the world was unfair. Now you realize the world is just a game, merciless only to those who refuse to learn the rules. You are not meant to serve. You are not made to suffer. You are simply misled, taught to fight honorably in a war where rules mean nothing. But now, you are awake. You do not chase respect. You radiate it. You do not seek power. You embody it. And as you stand at the threshold of your new life, as the architect, not the pawn, ask yourself, if you had known all of this earlier, how different would your past have been? And more importantly, how different will your future be now that you know? There comes a moment, rare and irreversible, when the strategist ceases to merely play the game and begins to rewrite it. It does not happen with a grand declaration, but in the silence between moves, in the calm before your presence shifts the atmosphere of a room. Power, once external, now becomes an extension of your will. You don't adapt to the system anymore. You become the system. And others, whether they admit it or not, start adjusting themselves around you. You no longer chase influence. You craft it. With every calculated word, every orchestrated absence, you embed yourself in the thoughts of others. They begin anticipating your reactions. They weigh your silence as if it were judgment. They ask questions you've already answered, silently, strategically, without needing to speak. And when you do speak, every syllable lands like a decree. Because you've built an identity that demands attention, not because you asked for it, but because you've proven that silence in your hands is more powerful than 1,000 voices. You've stopped explaining yourself. Why? Because you understand that the need to explain is a form of subjugation. If someone doesn't understand your value, it's not your responsibility to justify it. Their ignorance is not your debt. You allow confusion to serve you. You allow doubt to spread like a fog around your outline. Why? Because only in fog does the shadow of a king grow larger than life. Clarity is for the common. Ambiguity is the territory of those who rule perception. And now, you move in shadows not to hide, but to control the spotlight. You choose visibility. You decide when your voice rises and when it vanishes. People begin wondering not just what you'll do, but what you're thinking. And that is the truest form of power, to reside in their minds when you are no longer in the room. You've become a presence, not a person, an influence, not a participant. You've come to understand that emotional control isn't suppression, it's possession. You own your anger, your fear, your desire. They do not own you. You use them when necessary, like tools. You can feign vulnerability if it suits you. You can appear warm, distant, concerned, even ruthless, not because these states consume you, but because you deploy them like a general moves troops. This is no longer mere reaction. This is tactical performance. You've embraced patience as your sword. The frantic are the first to fall. The emotional explode and burn out. But you wait. You observe storms pass while others drown in them. You know when to vanish and when to strike. Your timing is unnatural. You act not when expected, but when most effective. Every delay is a strategy, every silence a setup, every retreat a preparation for dominance. They call it luck. But it's nothing more than unmatched control. The strategist in you understands the ultimate principle. Scarcity creates value. You are no longer everywhere. You are a controlled burn. You do not respond to everything. You create demand through absence. People speak your name even when you're gone. Not because they understand you, but because they can't decode you. And the mind fears what it cannot decode. The unpredictable is not ignored, it is revered. You realize their power isn't taken, it is projected. It's an illusion, yes, but one that must be built with surgical precision. Control of perception, control of emotion, control of distance, control of silence. That is the empire you now govern. You are no longer begging to be noticed. You are the variable they cannot calculate, the ghost in their machine, the anomaly in their system. That is how rulers are born, not from title but from influence that cannot be replicated. And now, the myths fall away. Kindness without strength is weakness. Transparency without limits is vulnerability. Presence without mystery is forgettable. You once believed you had to prove your worth. Now, you understand. Your value was never in your compliance, but in your unpredictability, your control, and your ability to disappear just long enough to be desired. But we arrive now at the final revelation. The final myth dissolved. You never needed to become someone else. You simply had to stop being so easily understood. You thought strategy was manipulation, but no. Strategy is the only honest way to survive in a world designed to exploit those who don't think critically. It is not deception, it is protection with precision. You are no longer prey. You are no longer performing for a world that undervalued you. You are now the architect of your presence, the guardian of your information, and the sovereign of your identity. And yet, this new awareness births a new burden, because now that you understand the rules, now that you hold the tools, what will you do with them? Will you build? Will you dominate? Or will you return to comfort, to the illusion of powerless virtue? The game is no longer playing you. You are the game now. But here's the final question, the one that lingers, the one they will discuss in whispers long after the screen fades to black. If power lies in silence, then who among you is listening the loudest? And why?